For my live demo, here I am. This is St Peter's Square in the centre of Manchester, and what I'm going to do is try and capture a quick sketch looking, I'm actually in an island between two tram tracks heading out of town, and straight ahead we've got a series of towers called Deansgate Square. I like this view. I've drawn around here quite a few times because it ticks all those boxes for me. It's busy. There's lots of foreground. There's lots of really interesting things going on. I've got my tram lines, lamppost, statue, litter bins, enough people to make it interesting. Signage, as I talked about in one of my previous modules, we've almost got like a foreground, and we've got our main sort of focus, which is the buildings, is a Victorian hotel on the right called the Midland Hotel, and there's lots of architectural interest in that mid-ground, and then there's really interesting stuff going on in the background. For me, it ticks all the boxes. It's not going to be an easy view to sketch. So for this final module, I'm going to be using this sketchbook from Rhodia Touch. It's their aquarelle watercolor book. I've used it in some of the previous modules, but this is probably the best sketchbook, I would say, if you're using pen and watercolor, because we've got 300-gram paper, it's cold pressed, and as we open the book, it's a really nice, thick, creamy paper. I'm going to be drawing using a fine liner. The first thing, this view is still a one-point perspective view. I'm looking straight into the distance, and the first thing that I'm going to do is find my eye level and vanishing point. So in this demo, I am sitting on a very low stool, so my eye level is quite low. So I'm going to strike a line across the page, and I know that my vanishing point is straight ahead of me. So my sketches on location are usually quite messy, especially when I make my first mark. I'm sort of gauging the view really, and I think what I would do, so I'm trying to look, we've not got a lot in perspective, we've got the side of the hotel building on the right. I think what I'd probably do, I'm starting to think about where the tram tracks, got a sort of island, then I've got signs. I'm never quite sure how I'm going to do a drawing. It sort of just starts to take shape as I work. When I'm first setting the view up, and I'm just sort of just putting lines down as I sort of get into the view and starting to build the view up. So I'm using very light fine liner pen. I'm drawing with a 0.05, and that's going down to the vanishing point. So there's lots of tram lampposts and the like. So lots of things going on. So I think what I'm trying to do is establish how busy the view is. So you can see I'm starting to map the view, and as I get more confident in the lines, I start to firm them up a little bit. So they're stronger when I've got that more confidence in what I'm drawing. So got a red brick building. So as you can see, there's personally, the way that I sketch, there's really no logic to how I pull the view together. I'm just trying to create a sort of record of being in this space, and I'm working, I just sort of where my eye takes me, I guess, but I'm very conscious that I've got a big statue that I need to put in because that's quite important in the foreground. So I'm going to just sort of tackle that. This is actually the St Peter's Cross, I believe. And then behind the cross, we've got the back of the edge of the hotel. As I talked about in the first module that I did about one-point perspective, in terms of composition, even how I'm drawing it quite loosely, that space, that gap between the two sides of buildings, so it's the orange brick building on the left and the Victorian hotel on the right, that is really important, getting that proportion, that relationship right. So if I go back to my vanishing point, this building is sort of coming up. It's very, very ornate and actually very difficult to draw. So I'm actually just giving an indication of what that building is like, because if not, I'll be drawing for a very long time. So again, we've got a run of arches. We've talked about arches before. Now I'm actually drawing on location. I'm not trying to draw everything perfectly. I sort of keep, I guess, reiterating that, but it's just some of the little details that I really like. I'm not going to draw windows. In the side of this building, actually, there's another bit of the building that comes, because it doesn't really add that much to my sketch. But what I will do is, and this is something I do quite a lot, is just start to go off the page. And because we can see over to my left, we've got some landscape, we've got some trees. So I'm just drawing it very loosely, but just a sort of outline really. And then I've got my background, I've got loads going on here, but again, I don't really want to be drawing all these windows. Could take me a very long time. The reason I really like this view, and I really like it at night when it's all these towers are lit up and really changed our skyline, but I just want to put those in. Something called the Axis building, got the side of the building, and then we've got our Deansgate Square towers, the lower building, and then we can see the higher building. There is quite a lot going down right in the background. There's some really nice buildings, but we're just a little bit out of sight to see them. What I would just do as well then is start some of these foreground things. We'll start to, even like the steps are really important, going up to the statue. I'm starting to show those. Lots of tram. I think the only thing I've got slightly wrong is perhaps where I've set the towers up on the sketch, but again, because it's a sketch, it's not an amazing piece of artwork. It doesn't really matter, because what it's about is communicating the view, and it's the view as I'm seeing it at this particular moment in time. I'm not going to go in on any signage. I'm just going to finish the top of this statue memorial just a little bit. So just again, I'm drawing it very quickly, so I might start to put a few windows in again to give a sort of sense of scale. And don't forget that thing that people's heads are all pretty much on the same eye level. I suppose in terms of, I can almost draw the tram as it goes back, but that's probably getting a little bit too confusing. But I think probably just giving a feel of the tram lines. I think there's enough in that sketch for me now to just put a little bit watercolour on it. I regard the watercolour as another layer in the drawing. So I know the drawing is pretty truthful to the view. I might not have got my towers in the background quite as I wanted them, but the watercolour is just a layer that will help inform the sketch a little bit more. What I'm going to do is I just use a small, it's actually a hairspray lid, put some water. So this is actual watercolour paper in the pad, so I know that it's going to take the watercolour well. And I'm just going to go in, a bit of a dark day, but I'm still going to go in with a little bit of, actually, I'm going to go in with quite loose, very wet watercolour. So I like having lots of water on my page, and it starts to drip down, and then I build the colour up. In this image, I've got my Victorian building. This is a travel brush. So you can see how loose the watercolour is, but I really like the watercolour sort of working together. Perhaps a little bit more orange. So yeah, so the paper is taking the watercolour really nicely. It's really important that the watercolour has to work tonally. That's a big thing as well. So it's very loose. I know these colours work really nicely together, and I like it when it starts to drip. So the building's in the background. adding a bit of turquoise. But as you can see, I'm keeping it very, very loose. So everything starts to work together. So actually all the watercolour, the way that I'm doing it, the watercolour is working together. Actually, just squeeze a bit more. Then the other thing I like to do is just introduce some splashes. And then I'm introducing some darks in that sort of middle distance. I need to get those a bit darker. So it sort of gives a feeling of stuff happening in that middle distance. So again, I'm just, because perhaps I've got the towers slightly, and I think that's actually going to work tonally. I'm going in. So again, I'm just working down the page. This is like a neutral tint. So you can see how the colours are working together. And then I'll just change my water. Okay, so what I'm doing is just putting some bright little pops of orange. So I'm just actually layering up a little bit of extra colour, but we are actually going to have to stop now because it has started raining. But hopefully you can get the feeling for the loose, slightly messy, you know, it's capturing the feeling of clutter, things going on. Colour, approximately, we've lost some of the edge of this with the sky, but it doesn't matter because ultimately it's a sketch, and it's a sketch in a moment of time.